Scene 1. A billionaire never thought his twin girls could laugh again. But when Ethan Cross walked past their silent bedroom and saw his maid doing this, he realized grief had finally met its match. The sound hit him first. Laughter. It slipped through the West Wing like a mistake light. Breathless, impossible. Ethan froze mid-step, one hand still gripping the edge of his phone as if the call he'd just ended could somehow pull him back into reality. In this house, laughter didn't exist anymore. Not after what it had cost them. He stood there, listening, his pulse climbing with each second he didn't move. The sound wasn't distant. It was close. Too close. It was coming from behind the door he hadn't entered in 3 years. The twins' room. Impossible, he muttered. More plea than word. The Cross estate had once been filled with noise, tiny feet pounding hallways, overlapping voices calling for their mother, Claire laughing too loud whenever the girls made a mess. Ethan used to complain about the chaos. Now the silence felt like punishment. After the accident, the silence came first. Then the rules. No shouting. No sudden movements. No unfamiliar faces near the twins. Doctors had explained it clinically, their voices soft but detached. Trauma, withdrawal, selective mutism. Ethan nodded through every appointment, signed every check, but nothing changed. Lily stopped speaking entirely. Rose spoke only to her sister, her voice thin and guarded, as if words themselves could break. Ethan stepped closer to the door. Inside, something moved. A shadow crossed the floor, and then another burst of laughter, higher this time, doubled. His chest tightened painfully. 3 days ago, he had hired a new maid. Mara Hale. The agency file said little. Average grades. No long-term positions, no family listed. The head housekeeper had almost skipped her interview. Too quiet, too plain. But Ethan approved her anyway, distracted, uninterested. Staff came and went. They always did. Now his mind snagged on a detail he hadn't noticed before. Earlier that morning, he'd passed the linen room and heard someone humming. A lullaby. One he hadn't heard since the night before Claire died. At the time, he'd stopped walking, confused, his throat tightening, but when the sound cut off, he convinced himself it was memory playing tricks again. Ethan reached for the door. His hand trembled. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly, to no one in particular. He pushed it open. The sight inside stopped him cold. Mara was on the floor, shoes kicked aside, her uniform wrinkled and forgotten. 2 socks had been pulled over her hands, crude faces drawn on them. She was mid-motion, frozen now, eyes lifted toward him. Lily sat cross-legged across from her, holding the other sock like it was something fragile and alive. Rose was still smiling, laughter caught on her lips, unafraid for the first time in years. The room smelled faintly of crayons and clean sheets. Not grief. Ethan swallowed hard. "What is this?" he asked. Mara stood slowly. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. "I was telling them a story," she said softly. Lily looked up at him. And for the first time since the funeral, she didn't look empty. She looked awake. Ethan didn't move. Not closer, not away. He stood in the doorway as if crossing the threshold might break whatever fragile miracle had formed inside the room. Lily's small fingers tightened around the sock puppet. Rose leaned closer to her sister, their shoulders touching in unconscious habit born from years of shared fear. Ethan noticed it now, the way they mirrored each other when they felt safe, or threatened. "Girls," he said carefully, lowering his voice the way every specialist had taught him. "Do you want Daddy to come in?" Rose glanced at Lily before answering, as always. Lily didn't speak. She only nodded once. Ethan stepped inside. Mara remained standing, hands folded loosely in front of her, eyes lowered not in guilt, but in restraint. Like someone who understood the moment didn't belong to her anymore. "You weren't supposed to be in this room," Ethan said, not unkindly, but firm. "Yes," Mara replied. "I know." There it was again. No excuses, no panic, just acceptance. It unsettled him more than fear would have. He turned to the girls. Did you like the story?" Rose hesitated, then whispered. The sock had a silly voice. Ethan's breath caught. It wasn't just that she spoke. It was that she chose to. Mara knelt back down, slow and deliberate, careful not to steal the focus. "We can stop," she said to the girls, not to Ethan. "Only if you want." Lily shook her head. "Just once. Small. Certain." Ethan watched Mara closely now. The way she waited. The way she didn't rush to fill silence. Claire had done that. She'd always said silence wasn't empty, just crowded with feelings. An image surfaced uninvited. Claire on the living room floor years ago. Socks on her hands, making the girls shriek with laughter while Ethan pretended to work but secretly watched. Memorizing the sound. How did you know? He asked before he could stop himself. Mara looked up. Know what? That this would work. She hesitated. Just a fraction. Enough for Ethan to notice. Children don't forget who made them feel safe, she said. Even when they forget how to show it, the words landed heavier than they should have. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Rose curled protectively around Lily. Both clutching the sock puppet, Ethan stood in the hallway watching through the cracked door. The house felt different. Not healed, but breathing. Downstairs, he pulled up the security feed out of habit more than suspicion. The footage rewound to the previous evening. There was Mara sitting outside the twins' door. Not entering. Not touching the handle. Just listening. She'd sat there for nearly 20 minutes before quietly standing and walking away. Ethan leaned back in his chair, unease prickling his spine. Most people tried too hard with his daughters. Gifts, therapy, games, forced smiles. Mara had done the opposite. She waited. The next morning, Lily asked for her by name. Where's Mara? Rose whispered. Ethan closed his eyes. Rules had kept his daughters safe, but something else, something unnamed, had made them laugh. And for the first time, Ethan wondered whether safety had been the wrong goal all along. By the third morning, the staff noticed the change before Ethan allowed himself to believe it. It was small things at first. A door left ajar, a crayon rolling across the breakfast table, Rose humming under her breath while staring out the window, unaware she was doing it at all. Ethan noticed everything. He sat across from the twins at breakfast, pretending to read emails while watching their reflections in the polished table. Lily traced circles in spilled orange juice with her finger. Rose leaned forward suddenly. Can Mara eat with us? She asked, voice barely louder than a breath. The fork slipped from Ethan's hand and clinked against the plate. Mara, standing near the wall as instructed, looked startled. Oh, I shouldn't. It's fine, Ethan said too quickly. He cleared his throat. You can sit. Mara hesitated again, that same measured pause, before taking the far edge of the table. She didn't reach for food until the girls did. Ethan clocked it. Another small thing. Another choice. As Mara sat, Lily slid the sock puppet toward her. Mara smiled, not wide, not performative, just enough. He wants to say good morning, she said softly, lowering her voice into the same silly tone as before. Lily's lips twitched. Ethan felt it, then a dull ache behind his ribs. Hope hurt when it had been gone too long. Later that day, Ethan called the head housekeeper into his office. She's not like the others, Mrs. Dalrymple said carefully. I've seen a lot of staff come through here, Mr. Cross. Most of them tried to fix the girls. This one, she listens. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He wandered the house the way he used to after late deals, restless and alert. His feet carried him to the storage room, an unassuming door tucked behind the east wing stairs. He wasn't looking for anything specific. That's when he saw the book. It was wedged between old holiday decorations and boxes of untouched toys. A thin, handmade children's book, its spine cracked, pages yellowed. He lifted it gently, as if it might crumble. On the first page, written in looping, familiar handwriting, for Lily and Rose, love always. Mama. Ethan's throat closed. He turned the page. Illustrations filled the paper, crayon drawings of two identical girls and a woman with a wide smile. The style was crude but full of movement, like someone who understood how children saw the world. At the bottom of the page, another name appeared. Illustrated by Mara Hale, age 12. Ethan sat down hard on the storage bench. A memory surged. Claire sitting on the couch years ago, flipping through a book, laughing softly. Where did you get this? He'd asked. She'd smiled in that distant way she sometimes did. Family. Ethan stared at the name again. Mara Hale, the maid, upstairs. Laughter echoed faintly down the hall. And for the first time since Claire died, Ethan realized something terrifying. This wasn't coincidence. It was connection. Ethan didn't sleep at all that night. The book sat on his desk, unopened now, as if touching it again might confirm what his mind was already piecing together. The name, the handwriting, the timing. For years, he had buried everything connected to Claire that hurt too much to revisit. Now something he had missed was standing in his house, folding laundry and telling stories to his children. By morning, his decision was made. He found Mara in the laundry room, sunlight cutting through the narrow window, dust floating in the air. She was humming again, soft, almost unconscious. This time he recognized the tune immediately. Claire used to sing it when the girls wouldn't sleep. Mara, he said. She startled, the sound dying in her throat. Mr. Cross, I'm sorry I didn't hear you. That song, he said. Where did you learn it? Her fingers tightened around the folded towel. She didn't answer right away. From someone who loved them, she said finally. Ethan held her gaze. You knew my wife. The towel slipped slightly before she caught it. Yes. The word landed between them. Heavy and undeniable. Ethan exhaled slowly. 1,000 unasked questions pressing against his ribs. How? Mara looked past him, as if the walls themselves were listening. I didn't plan to tell you this way. You didn't plan to be here at all, did you? He said. Double quotes. No. Double quotes. Silence stretched. When she spoke again, her voice was steady, but something old and bruised moved beneath it. Claire was my foster sister. We lived together for 6 years. Before she met you. Ethan leaned against the counter, suddenly unsteady. Claire had mentioned foster homes once or twice, always lightly, always changing the subject before he could ask more. He had assumed distance meant pain. He had never assumed abandonment. She helped me draw that book, Mara continued. The one you found. You know I found it, Ethan said. Mara nodded. I saw the storage room light on. Of course she had. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. Why now? Mara met his eyes. Because your daughters were losing their voices. And I knew why. That night, Ethan sat outside the twins' room, listening as Mara told another story, this one quieter, slower. A story about two girls who built a castle of blankets to protect their hearts. Lily spoke again. One word. Mama. Ethan pressed his forehead against the wall. Silent tears soaking into expensive wood paneling. He remembered something Claire once said, years before the accident, after receiving a letter she never answered. If I ever disappear, she joked. Make sure the girls remember how to laugh. At the time, Ethan had laughed it off. Now the joke felt like prophecy. The following morning, Ethan did something he hadn't done since the funeral. He asked for help. Not from doctors, from the one person who remembered his wife the way his daughters did. Mara, he said quietly, watching the twins play on the floor, sock puppets between them. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Mara didn't rush to reassure him. She just nodded. Neither did Claire, she said softly. She just loved you anyway. The first time Ethan left the twins alone with Mara on purpose, it felt like betrayal. He stood in his office pretending to work, security feed open on one screen, financial reports ignored on the other. His finger hovered over the call button, ready to intervene if even the smallest thing went wrong. Control had become his only remaining language. On the screen, Mara sat on the floor with the girls, a blanket draped over all three of them like a tent. The sock puppets were gone. This time, she was using silence. Lily leaned against her shoulder. Rose traced patterns on the carpet. No pressure. No performance. Ethan's chest tightened again, not with fear, but recognition. Claire used to do that. Sit quietly until the girls filled the space themselves. Ethan had always been the fixer. Claire had been the listener. The memory hit harder than expected. Claire at the kitchen table late at night. Letters spread in front of her, eyes distant. You don't have to answer them, Ethan had said once. I know, she'd replied. But not answering doesn't mean I don't care. He understood now who those letters were from. Down the hall, Rose suddenly spoke. Tell the bridge story, she whispered. Mara smiled softly. Are you sure? Lily nodded. Ethan leaned closer to the screen. Mara began, voice low and steady, telling a story about a girl who learned how to cross a broken bridge by walking slowly, one step at a time. Even when everyone else told her to turn back, Ethan's breath caught. Claire used to tell that story when Mara came to stay during college breaks. He remembered a younger girl sitting cross-legged on the rug, dark hair pulled back, listening like her life depended on it. The bridge story wasn't random. It was inheritance. That evening, Ethan invited Mara to stay for dinner. The staff noticed. Whispers followed. Boundaries were shifting. I don't want to replace her, Mara said quietly when Ethan thanked her. I know, he replied. I just don't want to lose them. Mara looked at the twins, then back at Ethan. You won't. But you have to stop guarding their grief like it's a crime scene. The words stung because they were true. That night, Ethan dreamed for the first time in years. Claire stood in the doorway, watching the girls laugh. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She just smiled at Mara and nodded. The next morning, Lily did something no one expected. She handed Ethan the sock puppet. His hands trembled as he took it. Talk, she whispered. One word. One command. Ethan swallowed hard, dropped to the floor, and did the only thing that felt right. He made the sock. Speak. The girls laughed, not because it was funny, but because their father finally stopped being afraid of breaking. The change in the house didn't go unnoticed. By the end of the week, the silence that once ruled the Cross estate had softened. Not disappeared. Grief never vanished that cleanly, but it had loosened its grip. Doors stayed open longer. The twins began drifting into shared spaces instead of retreating to their room. Rose started asking questions again. Small ones, safe ones. Ethan watched all of it with cautious wonder. But not everyone was comfortable. The first complaint came from Mrs. Dalrymple, the head housekeeper, standing stiffly in Ethan's office. Boundaries are being crossed, she said carefully. Staff are confused. Miss Hale isn't behaving like a maid. Ethan didn't look up from the file in his hands. She's behaving like someone who cares. That may be, Mrs. Dalrymple replied, but attachment can complicate things, especially with children. Ethan knew what she was really saying. People left. They always did. And children paid the price. That night, he found Mara in the garden after the twins were asleep, sitting on the low stone wall beneath the oak tree Claire used to love. The moonlight outlined her profile, making her look younger, almost fragile. You're going to be asked to leave, Ethan said quietly. Mara nodded as if she'd been expecting it. I know. You don't seem surprised. I never planned to stay, she said. Just long enough. Long enough for what? For them to remember themselves. The answer unsettled him more than anger would have. Ethan sat beside her. Why didn't you come to me when Claire was alive? Mara stared at the darkened windows. Because she asked me not to. The words opened a door Ethan didn't know existed. She said you were building something fragile, Mara continued. A life that needed balance. She didn't want old wounds tipping it over. Ethan remembered Claire crying quietly one night, turning her face away when he asked what was wrong. He'd respected her silence. He always had. After she died, Mara said, voice tight now, I wrote. I called. I even came here once. Ethan's stomach dropped. I never made it past the gate, she added. The guard said you didn't want visitors. He closed his eyes. He hadn't wanted reminders. Inside the house, Lily stirred in her sleep. Later that week, the twins were invited to a small family gathering. Ethan's sister insisted. The girls froze at the doorway, panic rising, their progress threatening to collapse. Mara knelt in front of them. You don't have to go, she said. But if you do, I'll be right here when you come back. Lily reached for her hand. Rose looked at Ethan. You'll stay. I will, he promised. That night, the twins slept through the entire evening away. When they returned, Lily whispered something that stopped Mara cold. Don't disappear, she said. Mara smiled, but her eyes filled with tears. The word disappear stayed with Mara long after the twins fell asleep. She lay awake in the narrow staff quarters, staring at the ceiling, Lily's whisper echoing louder than any sound in the house. Children didn't say things like that by accident. They said them because they had already lived through the fear. By morning, Mara made her decision. She began packing quietly, not everything, just enough. The drawings the girls had given her, the sock puppets, the old children's book she'd hidden in her bag the day Ethan found its twin in storage. She folded each item with care, the way people did when they weren't sure if they were allowed to take memories with them. Downstairs, Ethan noticed immediately. He noticed because Lily noticed. Where's Mara? She asked at breakfast, her voice firmer now, less afraid. Ethan glanced toward the hall. She's working. But Rose frowned. She feels different. Ethan stiffened. Children sensed shifts. Adults pretended not to see. He found Mara in the staff corridor, suitcase at her feet. You're leaving, he said. She nodded. Before it hurts more. For who? He asked. For them, she said. For you. For me. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't get to decide what hurts my children anymore. Mara looked up at him then, really looked. I'm deciding because I know what happens when adults disappear without warning. The words landed harder than accusation. Ethan thought of the day Claire left for what was supposed to be a quick errand. The way the girls waited by the window. The way waiting became something else. You think I'll make you disappear, he said quietly. I think the world will, Mara replied. It always does. That afternoon, the twins overheard raised voices, rare, sharp, frightening. Rose pressed her hands over her ears. Lily clutched the sock puppet like a lifeline. When Mara came to say goodbye, Lily surprised everyone. She stood. She walked across the room. She wrapped her arms around Mara's waist. Stay, she said. One word. Stronger than any sentence she'd spoken before. Mara knelt, eyes shining. I can't promise forever. Lily pulled back, stared at her, and nodded. Promise now. Ethan felt something in his chest crack open. I want you to stay, he said, voice rough. Not as staff. Not as a favor. As family, the word hung in the air, fragile and dangerous. Mara inhaled sharply. That changes everything. That's the point, Ethan said. Later that night, Ethan stood alone in the twins' doorway, watching them sleep peacefully, sock puppets tucked under their arms. He understood now what money couldn't buy and control couldn't protect. Healing didn't come from guarding. Lost. It came from choosing connection even when it terrified. The first time the twins laughed outside the house, Ethan almost missed it. They were at the edge of the estate, near the old iron gates. The same ones Mara had once been turned away from without knowing what waited on the other side. A charity press visit had been unavoidable. Board members, donors, cameras. Ethan had resisted, but the world didn't stop for grief. The twins had stayed close, hands locked together, their eyes wide and wary as unfamiliar voices filled the air. Ethan felt their tension like a tightening wire. This was too much. Too soon. Mara knelt beside them, lowering herself to their level. She didn't touch them. She never did unless they reached first. You don't have to talk, she said softly. You don't have to smile. You can just breathe. A photographer adjusted his lens. The click was loud. Rose flinched. Lily squeezed her sister's hand, then did something new. She leaned toward Mara and whispered something. Mara smiled and nodded. Then she stood, slipped off one shoe, and set it on the ground. What are you doing? Ethan murmured, alarmed. Mara didn't answer. She crouched, turned the shoe into a makeshift puppet, and let it wobble across the grass in a ridiculous little dance. A few people laughed awkwardly, unsure if this was appropriate. Then Rose laughed, out loud. Clear, unrestrained. Lily followed, the sound bursting out of her like something she'd been holding in for years. The cameras froze. Ethan's chest tightened as the sound carried across the lawn to small voices, reclaiming something the world had stolen. Donors stared, stunned. Staff whispered. Ethan didn't care. He dropped to his knees right there in the grass and laughed too, tears streaking down his face, because for the first time, the miracle wasn't hidden behind a closed door. Later, after the guests left, Ethan found Mara standing alone near the gate. This is where you stood, he said quietly. Mara nodded. I thought if I waited long enough, someone would notice. I'm sorry, Ethan said. I didn't see you. You see me now, she replied. That night, Lily asked to sleep with the door open. Rose asked for a nightlight. Small requests. Ordinary requests. Miracles in disguise. As Ethan tucked them in, Lily looked up at him. Mara made Mama laugh too, she said. Ethan stilled. How do you know? She remembers, Lily whispered. So we don't have to forget. Ethan turned off the light and stood in the hallway. Heart pounding. The story wasn't just about healing. It was about legacy. And the final piece hadn't fallen into place yet. The invitation arrived without warning. A cream-colored envelope slipped onto Ethan's desk, embossed with the logo of the hospital foundation. A remembrance gala. Annual. Mandatory, if he wanted to maintain the illusion of continuity. Ethan stared at it longer than necessary. Claire's name would be read aloud. It always was. In previous years, Ethan sent checks and stayed home. This year, Lily saw the envelope. What's that? She asked. Ethan hesitated. A place Mama used to help. Rose tilted her head. Does it hurt? Yes, he admitted. Lily thought for a moment. Then Mara should come. The decision was made for him. The night of the gala, Ethan stood in the mirror adjusting his tie, hands unsteady. The twins wore matching dresses, fingers tangled together. Mara hovered near the door, uncomfortable in a borrowed gown, as if afraid beauty might be mistaken for permission. At the event, whispers followed them. Cameras flashed. Ethan felt the familiar armor slide into place until Lily tugged his sleeve. Too loud, she whispered. Ethan crouched. We can leave. Mara knelt beside them. Or we can find a quiet corner. They did. When Claire's name was announced, the room stilled. Ethan's breath caught. Before grief could swallow him, Lily squeezed his hand. Mama liked stories, she whispered. Rose nodded. Tell one. Ethan swallowed hard, stood, and surprised himself by raising his glass. My wife, he began, voice shaking, believed laughter was a form of courage. The room listened. She believed that remembering isn't what breaks us, forgetting is. He looked at Mara then. Really looked. And sometimes, he continued, healing comes from the people we almost miss. When he sat down, Mara's eyes were wet. Outside, under the night sky, Mara finally spoke the truth she'd been holding back. I didn't come here just for them, she said. I came because Claire asked me to watch over you too. Ethan laughed softly through tears. She always did that. Later that night, As the twins slept in the back seat, Ethan pulled the car over briefly, overcome. "Thank you," he said simply. Mara shook her head. "Thank them. They were brave first." At home, Lily murmured in her sleep. "Mama's not gone," she said. Ethan understood now. She wasn't. She was everywhere. They chose to remember her morning. Light spilled into the West Wing. For the first time in years, Ethan noticed it because Lily noticed it. "Too bright," she said, squinting, then laughing when Rose exaggerated a dramatic groan beside her. The sound lingered in the air, unafraid, no longer checking for permission. Ethan leaned against the doorway, watching his daughters argue playfully over which sock puppet was the boss. It was a ridiculous debate. It was everything. Mara stood near the window, quietly sewing one of the puppets where the seam had come loose. She moved with the ease of someone who no longer felt like a guest. The house had learned her rhythm. So had Ethan. "You don't have to fix it," Lily said seriously. "Broken things still work." Mara smiled at her. "Sometimes they work better." Later that day, Ethan did something that would have once felt impossible. He walked into Claire's old study and opened the locked drawer he hadn't touched since the funeral. Inside were letters and sent, unfinished, written in Claire's hand. One was addressed to Mara. "If you're reading this," it began, "then I didn't get to tell you everything. Please forgive me for being brave in the wrong moments. Watch over them. And if Ethan forgets how to laugh, remind him." Ethan sat down, tears blurring the ink. That evening, the twins asked for a story. "Daddy tells it," Rose said. Ethan hesitated, then sat on the floor between them, Mara close by. He didn't perform. He didn't plan. He just remembered. He told them about their mother, how she laughed too loud, how she cried at silly movies, how she believed joy was something you practiced, not something you waited for. Lily listened intently. When he finished, she leaned over and kissed his cheek. "Good story," she said. Outside the room, staff passed quietly, smiling without realizing it. The mansion no longer felt like a museum of loss. It felt lived in again. Later, as the house settled into sleep, Ethan found Mara on the staircase. "I never thought they'd laugh again," he said softly. Mara nodded. "Neither did you. But you did." "I remembered," she corrected. "They did the rest." Ethan looked toward the twins' room, where faint giggles drifted through the door. A billionaire never thought his twin girls could laugh again, until he saw his maid doing what money never could. She stayed, and the laughter did too.